guys, Camille here. I'm the owner of Broadwick Fibers. We specialize in super chunky knit merino wool blankets and then more specifically in hand-dyed and felted merino wool yarns. We get a ton of pattern requests from our customers just asking for more specifications on how to make the blankets. So I just thought I'd take a quick minute this morning and show you guys how we make them here in our Denver studio. Today we're going to be making a simple stockinette stitch 30 by 40 inch blanket, just like the one on the table right over here. I'm actually going to be showing you guys a new style of knitting that I developed specifically for my chunky knit yarns. I call it the Broadwick technique or the flat knitting technique. Basically, it's just a really simple technique where we lay our knitting flat on the table and then we work the stitches with our hands. It's super awesome because unlike arm knitting and needle knitting, you're not ever holding the whole weight of the blanket up, which can get really exhausting, so it's easier on your body in that way. And then you can also just walk away and leave your knitting if you need to and come back because everything's flat on the table right where you left it. So one just quick last note before we get started about the type of yarn that you decide to use for this project. I really would encourage you to use actual yarn instead of just roving. Most of the chunky blankets that you're going to see on Etsy and on Pinterest are going to be made with these beautiful raw roving strands. If you're not familiar with roving, all it is it's raw sheep's wool that's been washed and then it's been combed so all the fibers face the same way, but that's literally the only thing holding the strand together. So it's really delicate. You're probably going to break it pretty easily on accident while you're working with it, and then the finished product is going to tend to shed and pill pretty substantially. So I really would recommend using actual yarn for your projects. The two words you want to look for when you're shopping for your super chunky yarns are felted or spun. Either of those will be a really good indicator that you've got actual yarn and not just raw roving. We sell the hand-dyed and felted yarns if you're shopping around at www.broadwickfibers.com or on our Etsy shop. So we're going to go ahead and get started now, guys. I'm just going to move this down out of the way so we've got a clean work surface. All we're going to need for this style of knitting is our flat work surface, our hands, and this 4-pound hank of super chunky merino wool yarn. The one other tool that I do recommend that you have is this really nice needle felter and felting mat. It's not a total necessity, but it really does come in handy if you're joining pieces together. If you're buying the yarn from our shop, we send it all in one piece, so again, you don't totally need it, but it's good to have around. I'm just going to untie this. And we can get to work. So like I said earlier, we're making a 30 by 40 inch blanket today. We're going to start with a simple chain stitch. This chain stitch basically replaces the cast on in needle knitting. So the first step is just to form a simple slip knot, just like that. You want to leave this slip knot nice and loose so that you can use your fingers to work in between the loop. And then you probably want to leave about a 6-inch tail on the end right there. So then you're going to take your working yarn and you're going to grab it in between your thumb and your forefinger, just like that. And this is the start of your chain stitch. So your chain stitch is going to determine exactly how long your blanket is. So this blanket we're making is a 30 by 40 inch. So we want a 40 inch long chain stitch. Each loop in your chain stitch will be about 2.5 inches long. So you just want to cast on or chain stitch 16 stitches to get that 40 inch length. So you've got your slip knot and you've got your working yarn in between your thumb and your forefinger. All you're going to do is just pull that working yarn through to form a loop. And then you're going to grab it again and pull that working yarn through to form another loop. So we now have 3 loops in our chain stitch. We have our initial slip knot, our first loop, our second loop, and our working loop or our third loop. So we need 16 loops or 16 stitches in this chain stitch. So we're just going to continue on from there. So there's 4. And just remember, guys, it doesn't have to be exactly 2.5 inches, but you just want to keep it right around 2.5 inches. If you're a perfectionist, you can get out a ruler, but that's really not necessary. 7, 8, 9, 10. There. So then what you're going to want to do is lay that chain stitch flat, just like this. Now, what you want to focus on are these little tops of the loop, the ridges, if you will, that make up the part of the chain stitch that's facing you. So each of these ridges, you're going to work your stitches into. Take this working piece of yarn. It'll be facing down this way, but what I like to do is flip it up over the top of your knitting. You're going to take that working yarn and you're literally going to just tuck it under that first top ridge. So find your second top ridge, and then you're going to take your working yarn and just pull it up from underneath. Third top ridge, take your working yarn, pull it up from underneath. So we're just going down the row like that, and this is going to be our first row of knitting. This stitch is technically a knit stitch, so because we're doing a stockinette stitch blanket, all of our stitches on the front are all knit stitches. So we're just really nice and easily just going along, finding the top ridge, and just tucking that working yarn underneath to form a loop. Find the top ridge, grab from above, tuck that working yarn underneath to form a loop. Just like that. And then if you need to stop and detangle your yarn like I do, super easy, you're not going to lose your stitches. Just find that top ridge, tuck from underneath. Find that top ridge, tuck from underneath. Find that top ridge, tuck from underneath. This last one's a little bit harder to see, but it is there, so just make sure you don't miss it. So you've got your slip knot right here and then the loop ridge coming out. You just want to make sure you get that last one. And that is your first row of knitting finished. Moving on to the second row, it's pretty straightforward from here, guys. Literally, all we're doing is taking that working yarn and then forming a loop on our already existing loop. So you take it, pull it over the top of your knitting, grab from underneath and pull up another loop. Grab that working yarn from the top through the loop and pull it underneath. Grab through the top of the loop and pull your working yarn up to form another loop. Grab through the top of the loop and pull your working yarn up to form another loop. Grab through the top, pull up to form another loop. Grab through the top, pull up, form another loop. And you just keep going like that, right down, to get your second row finished. So moving on to the third row, again, you just take that working yarn, put it right over the top of the knit, and then you pull through to form another loop. So we're working on our third row now, guys. If you have them pull up a little bit, just pat them back down. You know, I was talking about that needle felting earlier, guys. This is a really good example of where you would want to use that needle felter. So literally all I'm going to do is just lay it over the top. It's just a little extra strand. And I'm just going to felt that little snap back into it. And then you can't even see it anymore. So we're just going to keep working. We're on our fourth row now. We're going 16 stitches long. Even though the width that we're going to get is only 30 inches, you're probably going to need to knit about 16 stitches this way as well. Each of these stitches is only about 2 inches long. So you get about 2.5 in the width and then only 2 in the length. And like I said, it's a super quick, fun, easy project. Probably take you about 45 minutes for this size blanket. If you want to make a bigger size blanket, like maybe a 40 by 60 for the end of a queen size bed, that's going to take you probably around an hour and a half to 2 hours to make. And you would need about 8 pounds of yarn for that size. We've just finished our last row. You want to make sure that you leave a fair bit of yarn for your cast off, which is what I'm going to show you how to do now. So we've just finished our last row. We're going to start the cast off the exact same way that we started all the other rows. So basically what we're going to do is just pull up a loop and then pull up another loop. You're going to pause. What you're going to do is you're going to take this innermost loop that you've just knitted and tuck it underneath your outermost loop. Then you're going to move on to your third row. You're just going to do another normal loop, and then you're going to do the same thing again. Take your innermost loop and just tuck it underneath that outermost loop. And you're just going to keep working that way all the way down the rest of the row for the cast off. So drop a loop, take that inner loop and tuck it underneath your outermost loop. Drop a loop, take that inner loop and tuck it underneath your outer loop. Drop a loop, take your inner loop, tuck it under your outer loop. You're just going to work that way the rest of the way down your row. I just like to hang on to this last loop with my finger while I work the next one. You don't have to, but it just makes it go a little faster. So we've reached the end and we just have this one single solitary hanging loop right here. So what you're going to do is just take the rest of your yarn, tuck it through that outermost loop. You're just making a little knot basically. Then you're going to tighten it. Just like that. Pull it and make it pretty snug, guys. So now you have this beautiful finished braided edge. Now to finish off, you can either, if you don't have a needle felter and mat, then you can just tuck it, or you can sew the end together just like that. If you do have a needle and felter mat, how I usually finish it, it's going to take a little bit of work because it's felted together pretty tightly. But you just want to rip, make sure you rip, don't cut, because you want the kind of uneven edge. So you're just going to rip it open and tear that yarn. It takes some effort because it's nice and tightly felted together. So now you just have this little edge. And basically what I do is I just tuck it back in and then attach it onto one of the pieces. It doesn't matter at all which one, guys. You're just kind of trying to hide it. So you've got that nice little fluffy tail end, and you're just going to felt it straight back into the blanket. So do this side, and then I like to flip it over, and just for security, Do it on the back edge as well. And then you're all finished. And there you have it, guys, your beautiful merino wool super chunky knit blanket. Remember, you can get the hand-dyed and felted wool at www.broadwickfibers.com or on our Etsy shop. And thanks so much for watching.